Hey, what's up, world? Eyes open in California here. So, welcome back. This is the oil for your lamp, part 5. David the King and a little history. So give me just a moment to get set up here. Okay, so we're still adding on to this timeline. So we've went from the creation to the flood. We spoke about the land of Canaan and Abraham. We spoke about the Exodus, and we spoke about the Promised Land. So now the next thing I wanted to speak about was King David. The same David that you see here in this sculpture. David is a 17-foot masterpiece of Renaissance sculpture created in marble between 1501 and 1504 by the Italian artist Michelangelo. The same David that killed Goliath. So here's a little history about Israel. So Israel was given judges, and the judges were to judge the people, right? The Lord did not want to give Israel a king because the Lord warned them, when you get a king, the king is going to take your goods. He's going to take your land. He's going to take your best animals. He's going to take your sons and your daughters as slaves. You don't want a king. You don't want to be like the other nations. And the people of Israel kept begging for a king. They wanted to be like the other nations. So finally, the final judge of Israel, Samuel, was told to anoint Saul as king, King Saul. And King Saul wasn't a very good king. And he did a lot of the things that the Lord warned the Israelites that a king would do, right? So now here is Samuel, the judge Samuel, speaking to King Saul. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord hath commanded him to be captain over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee. This was Samuel telling King Saul, you haven't done what the Lord commanded you. So the Lord is now looking for a man after his own heart. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart. Acts chapter 13, verse 22. And when he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. So the Lord found David, the son of Jesse, and he was going to be the king after King Saul, because David was a man after the Lord's heart. David, the king, was a psalmist. And for many, many years, David was persecuted by King Saul because King Saul had an evil spirit. And he just had a thing for David. So David, for a large portion of his younger years, was running and hiding from cave to cave, trying to evade capture by King Saul. And David wrote most of the Psalms. So here's Psalm 27, verse 1, the Psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? See, when David was all alone in those caves, he was all alone for many, many years. But the whole time he knew that he was next in line to be king. So he just had to wait it out. And for many, many years, actually for all his life, all David had was the Lord. That was the only one he can count on. He counted everybody else out because everybody else is pretty much persecuting him. So David built a really, really strong relationship with the Lord, a very intimate relationship with the Lord. And he was a man after the Lord's own heart, and he was righteous. And this is David's kingdom. So here you have the land of Canaan, right? You have the Jordan River, you have the Dead Sea. This was the promised land right here. But David had expanded the borders of his kingdom all the way out to here, right? and he founded the city of David. The city of David was founded over 3,000 years ago when King David left Hebron and headed to the hilltop city of Jerusalem. This became the capital of all the tribes of Israel. They were united by God through King David, hence the city of David. And the Lord actually spoke about this. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on an hill cannot be hid. Jerusalem was that city set on a hill. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of the world. That's why it was set on a hill. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. So after King David's son Solomon took over as king, and he started building Solomon's temple under strict orders, right? So in 1 Kings 7:35, basically tells you that there was a Freemason's compass inscribed inside of Solomon's temple, right? So that's one detail that a lot of people overlook, but I caught it, and just trying to tell everybody, this is not what you think it is. Solomon also wrote the Proverbs. So here is Proverbs 27, verse 17. Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. So this is wisdom. Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. And right now I am trying to sharpen the countenance of my friends and my brethren, because we got to get out of here. We got to make it out of here. And I don't have all the answers, but the things that I do know, I'm more than happy to share. And I hope that if you're sitting on some really, really important information, that you pass it my way, because iron sharpens iron. So Solomon's temple stood for almost 400 years. It stood from 957 BC to roughly 587 BC, almost 400 years, right? Then the Babylonians came and they destroyed the temple, and they exiled the people from Judah to Babylon, right? And that period in time lasted 70 years. And then they were freed from Babylon by King Cyrus, and they built the second temple, and the second temple stood from 516 BC to 70 AD. So about 40 years after the Lord ascended into the kingdom of heaven, the second temple was destroyed. But something happened. Something happened in the year 145 BC that I want to tell you about. Then came along an evil Greek man by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes IV, son of Antiochus the king, and he set up the abomination of desolation in the second temple. So the abomination of desolation has already happened once, and it's going to be a double fulfillment, right? Because in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 54, it says this: Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. So you have this evil king named Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And any bit of literature that you read about him gives you the idea that he was a very, very horrible human being. And I know we're not supposed to say that. He did very, very horrible things to people. He was a very wicked, evil person, right? So he actually set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar in the second temple. This is what he set up in the temple. He set up an image of Zeus, the Greek mythological god. And then he also sacrificed a pig upon the altar. This was the abomination of desolation. It was done by Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And this is going to be a double fulfillment, because this is going to happen again. And by the way, didn't anybody else read 1 Enoch chapter 19 besides me? This is voodoo. We're going to speak more about this in the coming videos. So this part 5 has been all about King David and a little bit of a history lesson, right? And there's a lot of things that happened from King David to the time the second temple was destroyed. That's a long period in time, really long. It was 1,000 years had passed, right? And in those 1,000 years, there were many prophets and a lot of things happened. And basically, I'm going to be showing some of the scriptures from the prophets in the videos to follow after this. This one here was just a quick overview of King David and a little bit of a history lesson, just so you know about the temples, because there is going to be a third temple that will be built, and it's going to be built soon. And the abomination of desolation is going to be set up in that third temple. Again, it's going to be a double fulfillment. And this is going to be when the Antichrist is going to say that he is the Messiah, is what is going to happen. All the people who follow Judaism are going to be in for a shock, because the Messiah that they're waiting for, or if you're watching this video, the Messiah that you're waiting for, he already came. His name was Yeshua HaMashiach. He was crucified. And he rose 3 days later, and he ascended into the kingdom of heaven, and he's coming back. But the one that's going to show up in Israel and proclaim himself to be the Messiah is going to be the Antichrist. And a lot of people are going to realize this too late, when it has already happened, right? But fortunately, the two witnesses are going to be walking the streets of Jerusalem, telling people that the one who is in charge is not the Messiah, right? So the third temple still has yet to be built, and everyone in Israel is waiting for the third temple to be built. God doesn't dwell in temples or structures built by human hands, right? The Lord said, wherever two or more are gathered, that is your temple, right? Because God dwells here in this temple and in your heart. So this section has been all about King David, and I could have went deeper, but you understand the point. The point is, King David was a man after the Lord's own heart, and 2 temples have been built and destroyed, and the third temple is about to be built. And the Antichrist is going to declare himself to be the Messiah, and everybody is going to eat it up. But a lot of people are going to know immediately that he's a fraud, right? And the thing about it is, the story of King David hasn't been finished yet. Just the same as John the Baptist was born with the spirit of Elijah, there is one person here on earth that has the spirit of King David. And this story has not been finished yet, because this has everything to do with this. So this is the end of part 5. Thank you. God bless you.